I'm Sean McManus from TelecomTV, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Chivas Nambiar, who is the General Manager of the Telco Business Unit at AWS.
Thank you, Sean. Excited to be here.
Thank you, likewise. Chivas, AWS is again joining the industry at Mobile World Congress. Tell us a bit about the key trends for the event this year and what people should be aware of to get the best out of it.
Yeah, we're excited to be here at MWC for our presence. That involves a lot of customer conversations, some demos, some announcements that we're driving. But overall, if you think about the telco industry and the transformation that it's going through, what we're most excited about is how is that transformation applying to the different things that make up a telco flywheel, right? I always talk about a telco being a flywheel made up of usage that drives networks, that drives then creation of new products and services. And this year in particular, we're starting to see both the network modernization piece drive that part of the flywheel, as well as generative AI being applied to multiple portions of the flywheel. As an example, we will do announcements this year that help customers really imagine how to take all the capabilities of a cloud and bring it to what they do in the core of their network business. And that allows them to build fully managed systems that have observability built in, that have the ability to react faster built in. And we are excited that telcos are finally getting access to some of these capabilities right at the edge of their network.
That's brilliant. Tell us about the announcements you are making this week.
We have 3 announcements that we're doing. The first is a preview of a product that allows telcos to take our Outpost infrastructure and use that for high throughput use cases like UPF functions in a 5G network. The second is actually a partnership with Nokia, where we're building a ARM-based Outpost RAN server that can sit at the base of cell towers with an integrated L1 card and a fully managed experience. Then finally, we're working with our IoT teams to build a managed integrations program where you can take devices from many manufacturers, bring them onboard them, and then manage the entire lifecycle of it in a smart home.
Tell us about the use cases that AWS is enabling for telco.
A lot of our use cases are really from what the customers want to do. So in an example where we had a customer, Verizon in this case, work with us to say they wanted to think about how to take the power of language models and decide whether they want to run it on a device or whether they want to run it in the cloud. And so we've been working with them and MongoDB and Intel to create a model where there is an agent that sits on a device that makes that determination. And then for the things that they can manage locally, they drive it to a small language model that's been deployed on the hardware device itself. And if it cannot, then it gets routed back into the cloud and onto Amazon Bedrock. So that's a good example of where customers are starting to think about how to use some of these generative AI capabilities that they haven't had access to in the past. Another great one is one where you start to look at the engineering capabilities that some of our telcos and our telco ISVs have. Ericsson's storied company, fantastic engineering organization. They work on some of the most complex software engineering problems possible. And to take a 10,000 engineer organization and give them the ability to build faster is a hard problem to solve for. So what they have done in conjunction with some of the work that we're doing with them is really to take and apply Gen AI in the context of understanding what these systems are, how do they work, how do they interact, and then use that to speed up the development process. So like I mentioned, across that flywheel, we're seeing now multiple places where Gen AI is really coming into the core of what a business does in the telco industry.
Now, there's a packed program at Mobile World Congress this week. Tell us about the themes that you see having the biggest impact on the industry in the future.
There are a couple of areas that I would recommend people look at. First, there's actually a separate Gen AI summit that's happening, and the use case I mentioned with Ericsson, I'm going to be talking about it with the Ericsson team. We're excited about that. We've got quite a few folks from AWS talking about the work that we're seeing in network transformation. As an example, how do you take and model out everything that happens in a network using a graph database, and then say, what are the impacts to that, to then come back and decide how quickly can you react to it. We think that's going to fundamentally shift how network transformation, observability, and long-term network operations works. So that's going to be really interesting and exciting. We also have, as part of the 4YP program, one of our leaders on the AGI side, Vishal Sharma, out there talking about how to think about building these foundation models in a safe fashion, how he thinks that's going to evolve over time. So lots of focus in that space. I would also say be curious. We have just within the AWS space, about 24 demos across a range of partners and customers. And some of the things that you'll see here are the things we'll probably be talking about 2 years out, 3 years out. Some of the announcements you heard from us today are things we've been working on, and really like showcased as demos 2 to 3 years ago, right? So just being able to touch and feel it helps us really think about how to innovate in a different area and different space. And then we're excited about how that evolves over time.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.